Hi guys, welcome to U-Wrench. Today we're going to be doing a full water pump replacement. This is for the Grand Caravan, fitted with the 3.6 V6 engine, 2008 through to 2021. Same engine of course, also fitted in the Chrysler Town Country, and the process is very similar. So let's get stuck in. So working as per the Dodge workshop manual, before you do any work on any of the auxiliary drive belt components, first thing we need to do is to disconnect your negative battery terminal. So we've got an engine mount down at the bottom here, as you'll see in a second, that needs to be removed, and to allow us to do that we need to gain a little bit more access. So we're going to get this airbox completely out of the car and away. So first thing, to give us a bit more space, let's just pop the engine cover off. I've just got a series of poppers around the outside. Let's pop all those off and put that to one side. So just at the back of this main air hose here, we've got a clamp. So we're going to unscrew that, so that's ready to be disconnected. So next up, you've got this air hose connecting to the top of the airbox. Just pop that off. So next we've got a little bolt here, size 13, that connects your power steering fluid reservoir onto the airbox. Let's get this removed. Now just lift up your power steering fluid reservoir, lift it off of that. I'm just going to bring that forward just a little bit, just lean that out of the way of the airbox. So next we've got these little clips on the airbox. Let's get these disconnected, one here, and then another just down in here. So now we can lift up the airbox lid, pull that forward to disengage at the back, give this whole pipe here a bit of a wobble. Remove that whole assembly from the car. Next up, just remove your air filter. So next, this whole airbox is going to pull up and out. A couple of things to note: you need to kind of push this to one side to allow it to come up, and also you'll notice that it comes up under the lid here of your washer fluid. So just go ahead and open that so you won't hit that as well. That up and away. So we can now see our mount here. It's actually in two sections. There's like an upper plate sits on top here, and that's bolted through, so we're going to have a few bolts to remove there, and that bolts through onto the actual mount itself, which is this unit right here. And this mount, the bolts actually pass right through the water pump, which is why it's essential obviously that we need to get this mount removed. However, before you do that, what we've got to do is temporarily support the weight of the engine, so that as we remove those bolts from the side of that mount, the whole thing is not trying to kind of drop half an inch. So you don't want the weight of the engine on those bolts. So you're just kind of taking the weight of that engine just temporarily to allow you to get this mount removed. So now we want to come underneath the car and get rid of any engine under trays or plastic covers that you've got in the way, because we're going to need to access some of the components here. So we need to temporarily support the weight of the engine, and when we do this, you're going to do this using a jack. And when you put the jack up, remember you're not trying to lift the engine up, so you just want to take it so that jack touches and goes snug. And if you're one of the most common places to do it, when you look at the Dodge workshop manual, it doesn't specify, it just says to make sure that the engine is supported. It doesn't give you a specific point by which you should support it. But the mount that we're taking out is obviously on this half of the engine, so it needs to be supported on this half. There's no point supporting it over there. One of the most common places you can do it will be to get a kind of a block of wood and then put your jack on the bottom of that across the bottom of your oil pan here. However, as we can see, this one's got some age to it. It's got some rust getting into it, and these are only thin. So I'd be reluctant in this particular instance, because this one is a little bit worn, to take the weight of that engine. So we're going to find an alternative spot. So we'll look at that right now. So we just shot round to the back of the pan here. Here's the sump plug, the oil drain right here, and we can see we've got a couple of nice places here. There's an ideal spot right there. You could get a nice piece of scrap wood vertically under there, down onto your jack. That would be perfect. You've got another one tucked in just behind it there. That would probably be the best one. You definitely take the weight there, and that might be a workaround if like ours your pan looks a little bit compromised, you're a little bit worried about taking the weight there, then there might be a good alternative spot. But it doesn't really matter where you put it, but you have got to support the engine properly, and so you want to do it somewhere that's safe. So that looks to be a good spot. Once you've got your support in, remember you want to jack that up so it's taking the weight just there. You don't want to try lifting it, you want to do it so it's just definitely jammed in there, and that's good. So I'm just going to get some penetration spray onto these. Loads of brands, we're using Plus Gas, there's stuff like Liquid Wrench, and even WD-40 do a reasonably good job of this. Just helps to soak in down into the threads, can make it that little bit easier. So these two here, they're size 13. I'm just going to use my impact wrench to do it quickly. I've got a little universal head adapter here just to allow me to vary the angle. So we're going to get these two size 13s removed. So next we've got these three larger bolts here. 1, 2, third one just there. These are size 16. Now we can just lift this plate up, and if you've got a ground cable attached, ours isn't, I'll check that. You may well have a ground cable attached to it. If you have, you can just kind of pull this over to one side and just rest that kind of wherever you can. So now we've got some more size 16s, one here on this corner here, another up here, and one at the bottom just here, and then in addition to that we've also got a size 13 just there. There's not a lot of space on this bottom one. I've had to swap to a 3/8 wrench, smaller head, smaller bit, and that will just fit in there. What you'll find is when this one unscrews, it won't remove from the, you won't be able to pull it out of the side, so that'll have to be removed with the mount. So as I mentioned, this lower bolt won't come out, so you're actually going to remove that when you remove the whole mount. So we've just got this size 13 to do here at the front. So you can leave those two lower bolts in place. Start to draw the whole thing forward, and out it comes. So next up, going by the Dodge Workshop manual once again, once you've got to this stage, you can safely lift the vehicle. However, if you're working on jacks or axle stands or something like that, and you've already got your jack in supporting the engine, but your car is at your correct working height, then obviously there's no point in removing it. That can stay in there for the time being until you get a little bit further down the line towards the end of the job. But if, however, you're using a ramp like we are today, then it's safe to lift it away from this, so this can be lowered and moved out of the way. Okay, first things first, you want to make sure that your system is cool. Obviously, if you've left your car overnight, then it's going to be cool. If you're unsure whether the engine is, the cooling system is still hot or not, what you can do is you can squeeze this top hose just here and see if it's under pressure. See, it's squeezing very easily. If this was full of coolant or hot air, then when you try and squeeze this, it'll actually be quite solid. You can see there's nothing in that, so that's a good indication of the cooling system being cool. So that means you can safely open your radiator cap when we need to. I'm going to leave it on for just for the time being. Important thing to note is every time you do a coolant change, it's well worth getting a brand new cap fitted as well. These things do go faulty and they can cause all sorts of issues, from overheating or loss of coolant, doing strange things, strange pressure in the system, all sorts of weird stuff. They're about $10, $12. So if you're doing a coolant change, make sure you get a new cap at the same time. So next thing you want to do is just make a mental note of the level in your coolant reservoir here. Good way to do it is if you get your torch, actually shine it straight down the hole and then look down the side. You can kind of illustrate where the colour is. So you can see we're sat pretty much bang on the minimum mark at the moment. So the reason that we don't want to remove the radiator cap just at this particular time is we're doing this as per the Dodge Workshop manual. What you want to do is leave your radiator cap attached, then open the valve, which we're going to do next, at the bottom of your radiator, the drain valve, to start your radiator draining. Because what you want to do is you want to pull any coolant that's in here, you want that to be pulled back in. And if you remove the radiator cap, that's not going to happen, because you don't want this to be half full or full with coolant. So obviously you want to change every bit of coolant in the whole system. So that's the kind of theory behind that. Also, if you haven't done so already, just before you go and you open up that valve, just remove that temporarily, just to ensure that there's no pressure in the system, and then pop it back on securely. So if you come down to the left side of your car, this will be your driver's side for left-hand drive vehicles. And you might well have your plastic engine under tray here. Obviously that does need to be dropped out of the way. Just go around the outside and remove each of the screws or the clips and just drop that down. Fortunately this car doesn't have one, so we can't show you the process. But with that removed, if you come down to this bottom corner here, you see this little thing with this particular one has a red cap. Sometimes they're black, sometimes they're red. This is your coolant reservoir here. So right next to that, you can see we've got this on the bottom of the radiator. This little drain valve here, and it's got like a little tap that comes off of the bottom of it, and so that's what we're going to be attacking. A couple of options when you come to open this up. What you can do is, obviously when you open it, it's going to come out this little tap at the bottom. That's going to leak all over your subframe here and kind of go everywhere, and it will go in various directions. So if you want, you can put a little bit of pipe, stick a little bit of pipe onto the end of that and just bring it out to here and drain it that way. Radiator cap should still be in place at this stage. What we want to do is just keep an eye on your coolant reservoir, and what you should see is it should start to slowly go down, because what will happen now is the system will be sucking the coolant back in from the bottom, back in via the attachment next to the radiator cap. It does take a little while, but if you listen very carefully, you should hear like a little gurgle, so you know it's still doing something. So you might want to leave that for 20 minutes, half an hour, until that gets down to the bottom. The other thing you can do, if your reservoir is draining very, very slowly, you can just unclip it and lift it up, and if you get it so that it's higher, physically lift it up so it's higher than where the radiator cap is now, you find that it drains much, much quicker, as we can see here. We've filmed a video on how to remove this already. We'll add a link for you in the descriptive text below on YouTube, so you can go down and check that out if you like. But if you find it's taking ages, you can just lift it out and it will drain quickly. Or alternatively, of course, once you've got it out, you could just pour it out as well. So now we've got the reservoir empty. Here we've got a better flow going on, the dripping into the waste tray. So now you can also open the radiator cap. Just pop that over to one side and just leave that continue draining until the flow is literally just gone to a slow drip. So we now have this plastic cover here we need to get out of the way. This one's a little bit broken. You can see there's a little bolt up there. Then we have a plastic trim clip through here. Another bolt just up in there, and there should be another clip there, but obviously that one is currently missing, so you need to get all 4 of those fixings removed. These metal bolts, size 10, and these little trim tools, you just kind of got to leave them apart with the special tool here. That helps. But you can just kind of get a screwdriver or something under there and start manipulating it, but that's what you need to do. It's just like a little push-in plastic clip. I'm going to drop this cover down out of the way. So for us to be able to remove our idler pulley, of course we're going to have to remove the auxiliary drive belt, the Serpentine belt. So that's going to be our next stage. So to remove our old belt, what we need to do is get a standard 3/8 inch bit, and that can go straight into the top of the tensioner there. And what we're going to do is once that's in there, we're going to turn this, and this will start to release the pressure on the belt. Once it's released, we can start to unhook the belt off of the pulleys. It's always a good idea to take a quick look at the old belt, give it a bit of a squeeze and see if there are little cracks that are opening up. This one's actually pretty good. So for us to be able to remove the water pump, we do need to remove the idler pulley up at the top here. It's a good idea to give this a bit of a check, bit of a wobble. There's often a tiniest little bit of play in these, but if yours is making a strange noise when you spin it, or you can feel a bit of a grind in there, it definitely should be replaced. That said, if you are doing a water pump replacement on this vehicle, this idler pulley is in the kind of $20 to $30 price range, and so it's one of the cheapest components on this assembly, apart from the belt itself. So it's well worth replacing these if you're doing a water pump replacement anyway. If your water pump's old enough to need replacing, the chances are, for the sake of $20 odd, you should really replace this as well. So with our size 13 socket, get that on the centre, and then we'll get this removed. So next we've got these 2 coolant hoses attached to the bottom of our water pump. I've got this large one right here, and just above it a smaller one. Little tip for you: if you get a hose that's stuck, grab your hook tool and be careful not to turn it outwards, because you don't want to pierce the side wall of your hose. But if you can get that in behind your hose, there, and then once you're in, just gently roll it around the outside, and that'll help break that seal. So next up, we've got this series of size 10 bolts. This is one there, there's another just up in there, another one just up in there, and they go around the outside, obviously, of your water pump. If you need to cross-reference, make sure you're not undoing any incorrect ones. Of course, you can look back at your brand new water pump just to check that the position that you're removing it from is definitely a water pump bolt. What you can do to ensure you've got the right bolts in the right places, you can place the bolts as you remove them one by one into your new pump. So here we have all of our new screws lined up in the new water pump. so we know which are the long and which are the short. And you'll notice as you come up to the top here, this one here is missing. It's at the top of the water pump next to these two big ones, and that's because if you remember when we removed the mount, you had the three big bolts and we had one small one. That's the small one that passes through there. So next, have a little bit of a feel of it. If you need to, you can grab your rubber mallet just to start loosening it up. There you can see that the seal's just starting to break now. There it comes. If you find that your gasket and your water pump are stuck together, just work your fingers around until you can separate the two. Find you'll need to pick it up a little bit. So then drop down the old unit there. And next, let's go back up if it didn't come off with the pump. Let's go around and break the seal on the gasket. Get that removed. So before we can look at refitting the new gasket and pump, what we want to do is grab yourself a razor blade and carefully just going to go around the edges here and make sure that everything's nice and clean so we get a good seal. And then also make sure you give them a good clean off as well. And before installing a new gasket, it's a good idea to take a tiny little bit of your coolant, your antifreeze. Just dab your finger in and just wet the rubber seal. The reason being, it's similar to when you do oil. A nice wet seal is always better than a bone dry one. So it just gives it a little bit of a fighting chance. So it obviously gets up to quite high temperatures, so this will just help ensure we get a good seal first time. So now we're just going to transfer our screws over onto the old one, so we know exactly where they're going to go. Obviously we now need access to the brand new one. I'm just going to grab my first screw to be fitted, which is going to be the top one right here. So just line them up. We want to get this first screw through, make sure everything else lines up well and you're happy with it. Much easier to do it now than when it's up under the wheel arch there. Just double check that your bolt is definitely still through your gasket, and if it is, start to line it up with the hole in the side of the engine. Then get that bolt started by hand. So next I'm going to do the very bottom one. Again, make sure it goes all the way through. And then we're looking to line that up and get that started by hand. So now just repeat that process, putting in all of the screws from your old water pump, putting them into the same positions in here and getting them finger tight at this stage. So now I've got all of the bolts started by hand. You can start to tighten them up. Don't tighten them up, just kind of get them so that the heads sit flat. We'll tighten them up at the end. And also when you do this, don't kind of go around the outside in a circle. You're better off, you want that to kind of go in nice and evenly. If you go around in a circle, it can sometimes not quite sit properly. So if you go here and then go to kind of a direct opposite diagonal, and then kind of come down and then do it diagonal, just like you would with kind of wheel bolts, just to make sure it gets seated nice and evenly, rather than going around the outside in a circle. So next, if you've got a torque wrench that'll go down to 12 Newton meters, which is 9 foot-pounds, then get that set up and go around and do these bolts up. Again, when you're tightening these up to specifications, don't go around in a circle around the outside. Do one, then the opposite one, and try and work in diagonal opposites. So next, just check that the water pump spins and is not catching on anything on the inside of the engine. That's perfect. So now we want to reinstall our two hoses, starting with the upper hose. And obviously we're going to move this clip back down to its original position, and then we're going to do exactly the same with the larger lower hose. And then give these hoses a good wobble and a bit of a twist. Make sure that they seem to be seated correctly. So next we're going to want to bring the engine level back up to its original position so we can refit that engine mount. So we're going to get this jack set back up and then give it a few pumps to lift that engine gently back up into approximately the correct position. So we probably dropped about 2 inches, so you can fine tune this as you go. Trying to try and get that engine back up to approximately its original position. There, looks like a good starting point. Get the top ones lined up first. One of my larger bolts, get that started, grab the second one, on the opposite side, make sure those are going in. Yep, they're good. And then we'll just also start to hand tighten these ones at the bottom as well. Just make sure that they're seating properly, finding their new home. And what we're going to do is just going to start to get these snugged up, make sure that it feels like it's going in nice and flush. So again, from opposite corners. So I'll get this one just starting to tighten, now go to the opposite corner diagonally and then repeat. And then when we get to the end of that process, we'll torque these up to the proper spec. So we'll start on the smallest one of the 4 down the bottom corner there, and I'm going to torque this up with the torque wrench, 25 Newton meters. And then I'm going to do the other 3 coming up to the opposite corner. So I'll do this top one next, and then this one, and then diagonally down again. And these are 55 Newton meters, 16 millimeters. So now we want to drop our top half back in. And this is where you can kind of get a gauge of the level of your engine. I can see ideally I could do with moving it up half an inch, so I just jack that up just half an inch, just take the wobble out of that, try and get as level as I can, and then we'll refit the bolts. Okay, so I've just put in the 3 there, I've just snugged them up a little bit, they're not anywhere near up to spec yet, so now I'm going to do the 2 little ones. Get these nice and snug, make sure everything feels good. Then we're going to torque these little ones up to 20 Newton meters. And then these large ones, torquing these up to 61 Newton meters. So now we have our engine mount safely back in and torqued up to the correct specification. We can lower our jack down, our supporting jack, and get that removed. Okay, so now we're going to look at putting our airbox back in. Our airbox goes in this orientation, and we've got this big hole in the airbox right here, and this pipe right here needs to feed through the side. In addition to that, if we flip the airbox over, you'll see we've got 2 of these kind of spikes, and also have the female version of one right there, and you need to make sure that those seat correctly. So we'll just have a quick look at where they go. One of those spikes goes into this one right here, the other spike this one right here, and then the female version slots over just down here. So you need to try and make sure when you put this back in that you're getting all 3 of those seated correctly. So once you think you've got it in, just give it a bit of a wobble. We know where the plugs are. There's one approximately there, so it should feel tight there. This one you can actually see comes all the way through. That rubber grommet's like a hole, so that's the top of the pin right there, so that one's definitely in. And we know that there's another one up here as well, so just check you're definitely in on all three of those. That feels good and solid and good to go. And we'll just drop the air filter back in and just make sure it's seated correctly and you're not going to crush any of the edges when that lid goes on. So now our lid, we need to make sure we get these little tabs across the back. They angle in and then the whole thing flattens down. So you want to lock in the rear edge first. And again, just check there's none of the air filter. You haven't crushed the foam of the air filter. And once you're happy, reattach your three outer clips. So now we're going to make sure that our pipe seats correctly. It's got a little kind of rubber grommet at the back there that sits in a little groove. Just want to make sure that you get that seated correctly. And next, just get this strap tightened up. You can even use size 8 on the hex, or you can use your flathead screwdriver again. You just want to get it nice and snug so there's no twist or movement in it anymore, but you don't need to over tighten. Be sure to reattach your air hose. We just tuck the back out of the way here. It goes onto the side of the airbox. Make sure it goes all the way in. So now let's just reattach our power steering fluid reservoir and pop our nut back on and just snug that up. Just to finish off, be sure to place your engine cover. So to refit the idler pulley, attaches into the water pump all the way up here. When you first put this bolt in, you'll go, well, the whole thing's going to rattle around. How do I know it's in the correct position? And it's actually the bolt that's the key to this. You'll see as this rattles around, as you get to the end, it naturally seats. So the centre of this bolt is going to get this idler in exactly the right position as you can snug it up towards the end. So now grab your torque wrench. You need to torque this up to 25 Newton meters. Now just remember the correct routing of your auxiliary drive belt. It's actually very simple. It does go around the outside of everything. So once you've come up around the crank and over the top of the tensioner, just here, it just goes around the outside. Now the only exception to that, of going around the outside, is when it comes back up from the AC, goes over the top of the water pump just here, and then back down to the crank. So that's the kind of the only exception. So once you're past this point here, it just goes around the outside of everything, and then you've got to remember to come up, and that's the only place that you break that kind of chain is between your AC and your crank there, and at that point you've got to go up and around your water pump. It's a good idea just to double check that your belts appear to be the correct size and length, and also double check that they've got the correct number of grooves. So I've gone ahead and I've routed the belt in the correct direction. For the tension, obviously we're going to have to release the tension on this belt, so we've got a little bit more space. So what I've done, the last one that I've left to be fitted right up here is the alternator pulley, which is actually the smallest one. So I've got kind of the smallest amount of space needed to get that belt fitted back on. So we're going to adjust the tensioner and hopefully hook this back up at the top here. So now release the tension on the tensioner. Before you release the tension, just have a quick look on all of your pulleys. Make sure that belt is definitely seated correctly in the grooves. And if it looks correct, then slowly release the tension. And just give it a couple more little pumps just to help seat that belt properly. So now we've got that belt back on, we've essentially finished in this area of the car. I wouldn't recommend putting the plastic covers and stuff back on just yet, because what you might want to do once the coolant has been refilled, which we're going to look at next, is once it's refilled, then you can start the car and you can shine your torch down here, make sure that everything's running properly over these pulleys, any squeaks or noises that you had before, make sure everything is exactly as you want it to be, and then you can turn off the engine, put all this back on, and consider that job done. The next thing we need to look at for this job is getting that coolant back into the car. Okay, so once you're happy that it's all drained out, you can go ahead and close this up. Close it up as tight as you can, and then just grab a flathead screwdriver. Be careful, don't over tighten it because it is only made of plastic. Just give it a little extra turn. So before you go ahead and do your coolant refill, something you might want to consider doing is a quick pressure test. The reason being is you've just removed quite major components. You've removed that big old water pump complete with that gasket, and also you've removed and refitted those two coolant hoses as well. So there's a couple of points there that could have potential leaks, and a pressure test is a really good way to safeguard yourself against that and make sure that you're happy and confident in the system before you refill it. So to perform a quick pressure test on your cooling system, there's two main ways of doing it. The first one we're going to look at really quickly is to use a radiator pressure test kit. Now if you want to use a radiator pressure test kit, very easy to use. We've already filmed a full video on how to use this particular kit on the Grand Caravan. I've got a link for you in the video description below so you can go down and check that out. But the basic principle is what you do is you attach a hand pump which has a gauge onto it, and you pump air into the system to a designated pressure. You then wait at least kind of 15 to 20 minutes, come back and you see if there's been any drop in that pressure in that system. Obviously if there has been a drop, then it means you do have a leak somewhere in that system. If it holds its pressure constantly, then you know that your system is good. Very easy to use, so if that's of interest, please do check out that link below. And your second option, if you want to do a pressure test, is this kind of does the opposite. What this does is you have to connect this to an air compressor. This is a little bit more complex than the kit that we just showed you for the radiator pressure test kit. This is a little bit more complex. This is a vacuum kit. And what you do is you attach this system via an air compressor, and rather than put air into your system, it actually sucks air out of your system. So your hoses, you'll see when the like your main radiator hoses, when you start to suck the air out of them, they actually kind of go quite flat. And again, once you get to that certain pressure, then you leave it for 15-20 minutes and see if that pressure, well, technically it goes up because you've created a vacuum. See if the pressure then starts to normalize again. If it does, then that's indicative of a leak, and if it holds its pressure, then you are good. One of the advantages of this is once you've done that test, additionally you can then attach this hose onto it and actually use it to reverse that suction. So you can put the end of the hose into the bottom of your coolant bottle, turn on the tap, and it literally suck the coolant from your out of your coolant bottle down into the system, and it does help prevent potential air locks. So quite a good system. We'll add some links for you. These are quite cheap, sub $50 on Amazon. We'll add some links for you to amazon.com and .ca in the video description below, so you can go down and check these out if you like. But that's your two kind of basic options. One does suction, and the other one literally does quite the polar opposite. You actually put pressure into the system, but either of these systems will allow you to test that your system is holding pressure correctly. So I'm going to put my water in first. This is distilled water. You shouldn't use you shouldn't use tap water whilst doing this. Tap water is full of various minerals, and they can calcify and do all sorts of things inside your cooling system. You want to use standard distilled water. This is just normal distilled water from Walmart. It's like 95 cents for 4 litre bottles, and that's what you want to use, distilled. Do not use tap water, especially if you live in an area that has a well rather than public water. And then next, add your coolant. And remember, ours is a concentrated coolant. If yours is pre-mixed, you should not mix it with water. So next, if you look at where your oil filler is, just down the side of the engine, just down there, hopefully you can see that, that's your thermostat right there. And on the top of the thermostat, you've got this cross, and that's to allow you to unscrew it. And what we need to do is we need to unscrew this, because when we start to fill the coolant up, this actually got a little kind of a bleed valve in it, and what we need to do is monitor that and fill our coolant until we see coolant starting to come out of the valve there, and then we can reclose the thermostat. So we just need to get this open. So we're going to grab a flathead screwdriver. Now, to help you along with this job, it's definitely worthwhile investing into one of these spill-proof funnel kits. These are sub $20, and we'll add some links for you to Amazon in the video description below of where you can get these types of kits for under $20. They come with a whole range of different adapters to fit various different vehicles, and this is a really, really useful piece of kit. So how does this funnel kit work, and what makes it so useful? Well, basically what it allows you to do, it allows you to pre-fill this so that your level of coolant is above your whole cooling system. And so what will happen as the air displaces in the cooling system, you actually get bubbles coming up here, and that will be displaced, so the coolant that's in here will go down and displace the air that's coming up. If you try doing that just in the end of the radiator cap, just down in there, it's very, very difficult on something like the Grand Caravan that we've got here. It kind of goes down and then comes across, so if you look down into it, you can't actually, you can only see like that deep, so you can't actually see what the level is in the radiator. And likewise, as those bubbles come up, it's going to push fluid and stuff out of the top of your radiator, whereas having this elevated, it will allow all that air to come back up, and it will allow it to displace, and so this level can kind of fluctuate as it needs to as the air comes up and the coolant goes down. So what we're going to be doing next is we're going to start adding the coolant into the system. Now at this initial stage, we're not doing the complete fill. Remember, we've got that valve open on our thermostat down there. So we take a quick look at that thermostat valve again, just down here. Remember, we just opened this up a minute ago. So what we're going to do is we're going to add enough coolant into the system until we see the coolant starting to leak from this valve just down here on the top of the thermostat. And then once we get to that stage, we can close this off and continue with the refill. But that's what we need to do. We want to see the coolant coming out from the thermostat valve just down here that you've just slackened off, and then we can close that off. When you're doing this, keeping an eye on the thermostat, you'll see that it will push out a little bit of water because you're displacing the air. So when you start to put it in, you should even see that thermostat valve is hissing. You'll hear a hiss coming from it, and you want to keep doing it until you actually get a steady flow of coolant coming out of there, not just the kind of remnants of what's being spat out with the air. Yep, just there you can see that we're starting to get a steady flow there now down on the valve, so now ready to close that off. So just close off that valve on top of your thermostat. Okay, so there's an extra step mentioned in the Dodge Workshop manual, which we will make you aware of, and that's that they also recommend to disconnect the upper heater core hose. You've got the heater core hoses, there's these two just here. There you go, actually says heater on it. There you go. So these are the ones, and they actually go up, and they go up into the up under the bulkhead there, and those will go into the cabin, and that's what takes the coolant and the heat inside into the heater core inside the vehicle there. So they don't mention whether technically you should disconnect it at this point here, or I think more likely right up underneath there. However, again, in kind of real life, if you watch online guides, check out all the forums, again, this is another one of those steps that's not really done. We are going to be doing the full process later on, so we are going to be circulating the coolant through the heating system inside the cabin, so we can evacuate any air that's trapped in here at that stage. But the reason that they get you to do it is they say disconnect this hose, put a bit more coolant in until you see the coolant running from this hose, just like we did with the bleeder valve, and then close it again. But again, it's not essential, and we are going to do the full process. So if there is any air that gets trapped in there, that's going to circulate and come back through, and we will get rid of it. So with our thermostat now closed off, we are going to continue filling up the coolant. The full coolant capacity on this 3.6 V6 is 12.6 litres, but we don't suspect it'll take quite that much, because obviously you do still have a little bit of coolant that's left in the system. You can never get rid of all of it, but we're just going to keep her going with this process, and we'll join you further down the line. And so what will happen, as you saw, is the air bubbles will come up and they'll be displaced. There's another one. They'll be displaced automatically, so the level of the coolant will slowly go down as the air comes up through the system. And when you get to a stage where it's slowed right down, another thing you can do to help it on its way is to grab your, I've just taken the engine cover off here, grab the upper radiator hose here, just give it a bit of a squeeze. It's called burping the system. This will just help with the displacing the air and the coolant. So now at the stage we've done about 7.5 litres, something like that, and the air bubble displacement is now slowed right down. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to start the next part of the process, which is going to be to start the engine and start to get the coolant circulating around the cooling system. So what we're going to do next is we're going to start the engine and allow the engine to start to warm up. Now what you'll probably find is when you first start the engine, not a lot will change with regards to your funnel right here, until the thermostat opens. That's what we're waiting for, because once that thermostat opens, then that coolant is now starting to fully cycle around the system. Now obviously we know where the thermostat is. We just opened the valve on it earlier in the process, and that off the back of that thermostat, it goes directly onto your upper radiator hose, which is this large hose right here. So when you start your engine, yes, you'll have a little bit of ambient warmth coming off the engine, but you'll find that this hose here remains cold, and it will take several minutes. It needs to get up to full operating temperature, so it might take 5-6 minutes or whatever, maybe a touch longer, before that thermostat opens. Once that thermostat opens, you'll get a sudden rush of the hot coolant that's actually in the engine, surrounding the cylinders. That will suddenly, as that thermostat opens, will suddenly come up this hose. So this hose will go from feeling fairly cold to all of a sudden being literally red hot, to the point where it's quite uncomfortable to kind of hold on to it for any length of time. And that's your indication that your thermostat has opened. And then once that thermostat is opened, then you're going to see the changes in your funnel right here, and that's when you're going to need to top it up. And the other thing to mention real quickly when the thermostat does open is you may initially get a rise in the level that's in your funnel, but then what you'll see shortly afterwards, you'll get a rise, and then all of that will probably disappear, and that's when you're going to have to start topping it up. So don't be alarmed if it starts to rise. That's all kind of part of the process, and this funnel is designed to take the extra fluid that's going to come up. If you want to lower that down right down to the lowest kind of level before you start, you can put the stopper in, lift it out, and drop a little bit out, but they should have plenty of space there. But obviously you don't want to be up here to start with. You want to be quite low, so when it does come up, you've got plenty of space. So as you can see, we've just dropped our level down just to give ourselves the maximum amount of space coming up, as I mentioned before. So we're going to be starting the engine in just a second. Before we do that, what we'll do is make sure that that our heating system is turned all the way up to maximum heat on both sides. The fan should be on minimum, so you can do that on either 1 or 2. I'm going to do it on 1, and again the same for the rear. Some have a separate matrix for the rear, so just turn that up, and again low fan, so maximum heat, low fan, and then we'll start the engine. And the other thing to keep an eye on whilst you're doing this process is to watch the temperature gauge in the car as well. It will show you when it's up to its full operating temperature, and of course you want to make sure that it doesn't overheat. If it's overheated, you've got an issue somewhere. Thermostat's just opened. As you can see, the thermostat is now open, but we're still getting a fair bit of air coming up through. What you want to do is get to the stage where all of that air's come up out of the system, and it kind of levels itself out, and it's just coolant flowing around in there without the air bubbles. So we're probably only a minute or so away from that now. And another thing that's definitely worth doing is whilst you've got that engine running, you know that the thermostat is opened. Whilst that coolant is starting to get warm, you can test that that warm coolant is actually coming through into the cabin of the car and into your heater matrix here. So what you can do is make sure you've got it on front vents, maximum heat. I'm just going to turn it up temporarily. And obviously what I'm looking for here, I want to feel that the heat that's in the cooling system is actually coming out into the cabin here. If not, it's possible that you have an airlock in the system. That is a possibility, but you shouldn't have. Yeah, we're getting warm there. So that's perfect. That's well worth double checking whilst we're here. So on our system here today, we left it for 2 cycles of the thermostat. The first time that thermostat opened, obviously it was very dramatic, had a lot of air coming through there, and it was bubbling, and then dropped right down. And once that had happened and that's leveled off a little bit, we did continue to get some slow air bubbles coming through, so we gave it a few more minutes. That thermostat eventually opened a second time. The level came up a little bit on the second time, nowhere near as dramatically as the first, came up about this much, and then again the same thing, it dropped down, and we put in probably a quarter of a litre, half a litre at most, and that's the level that we're at right now. And after that second thermostat opening, we didn't have any more air bubbles, so we know that all the air in this system has now come to the top and been displaced with our new coolant. So now we're going to use our stopper to remove the funnel. If you like, you can give the pipe here a gentle squeeze just to raise it up a tiny bit, push that in, and that will allow it to take the fluid that's on the bottom half of the funnel. Yeah, so that's allowed it to take that, so we've got literally nothing there. Remember, this is going to be hot. Take this over to your container, that's a job done with this kit. And then remove your adapter. See the level's good right in there at the top of the radiator. And then we're going to fit our new radiator cap. The Dodge workshop manual actually recommends that you repeat this cycle of heating the engine, but you have to allow it to cool each time, and they actually recommend that you do it, I think it's 3 or 4 times, but it takes so long for that engine to cool down to release the pressure on here. There's no way on earth that when you take your car into a Dodge main dealer that they're going to do this full thing 3 or 4 times. There's just not the time in the day for it. They have to charge you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars for it. But what you want to do, we now know all the air's circulating out of the system. We're happy with that. The thermostat's opening. We've got heat inside the car, so everything appears to be working exactly as it should. But what we're going to do is keep an eye on the level. So what you're going to do, obviously, it's going to be hot now. So maybe tomorrow morning, before you get in the car, just pop your radiator cap back off again. Have a little look at the level inside there. You want to ignore the level on your reservoir here, because that level will fluctuate. That will come up and go down depending on the actions of what basically comes through this pipe. So you're going to have air coming down that when it's getting hot, and then it's going to actually draw coolant back out of this overnight. So don't worry too much about the level in there unless it goes below the minimum level. Don't worry too much about that. It's in here that you really want to check that the level is topped up, but you want to do that when the engine is cold. So like I said, the next day before you drive the car, pop that off, have a look, check the level, make sure you're looking good. If you are, fantastic. And again, just do that. Dodge recommend you do it 2 or 3 times, so do that 2 or 3 times, and if you need to top up, it should only be a little bit, assuming you've not got any leaks or issues, so you can just top it up under there, pop that back on, and you're good to go. So we're almost there. Just got to remember we removed that plastic dust shield from down in the wheel arch area, so that needs to be refitted, and of course once that's been refitted you can go ahead and you can refit your wheel. So there we go guys, we have done the full job. The water pump is now completely replaced. We're really happy. We've got no more squeaking noises coming from our nice brand new auxiliary belt assembly, and we've done a full coolant change as well, so the car is good to go. Now, if this video has been helpful for you, can do us a quick favour before you leave. At the very least, can be sure to hit that like button for us, and also if you could subscribe, it really does help us out, and you'll find lots more great content just waiting for you to have a look at. We really do appreciate it guys. We'll see you again.